My name was Sophia. For 6 years, my life was built on 2 pillars, my work as a nurse, and my marriage to Aaron. We met in our late 20s, and I thought we were a team. I worked long, often exhausting hours at the hospital. Aaron was in tech sales, always talking about his next big commission. Our social life revolved around another person, my best friend Lily. We had been close since college. She was a constant presence in our home, a third wheel who never felt like one. I told her everything. I trusted her completely. The previous summer, we had finally bought a small house. It was a fixer-upper, but it was ours. As December started, I was filled with a pure, simple joy. This was going to be our first Christmas in our own home. I dove into the season with all my heart. I wanted traditions. I dragged Aaron to a tree farm to cut down our own pine. I spent a whole weekend untangling lights and hanging them on the eaves. The house smelled constantly of cinnamon and pine needles from the wreaths I made. I even baked 3 types of Christmas cookies, something I'd never done before. To afford the extra gifts and decorations, I picked up several extra holiday shifts at the hospital. Aaron appreciated it. He said the overtime pay would help with his end-of-year sales push. I didn't mind. I was building our future, our story. The tree stood proudly in the living room, waiting for the morning we would open gifts. 3 days before Christmas, my schedule changed. A surgery was postponed, freeing me up in the afternoon. I decided it was a happy surprise. I could finish wrapping presents and start prepping the food for a small dinner party we had planned for friends. I stopped at the grocery store, my arms growing heavy with bags filled with ingredients for a fancy meal. I pulled into our driveway as the winter afternoon sun was already fading. The house looked so beautiful with its white lights. I was smiling as I wrestled my key into the lock, balancing the bags on my hip. I pushed the door open and called out, "Honey, I'm home early." "You won't believe it." There was no answer, but I heard a faint, sharp gasp from the living room. Then, a soft, familiar laugh that wasn't meant for me. I walked the few steps down the hall, the bag still in my arms. I turned the corner into the living room. The only light came from our sparkling Christmas tree. Its multicolored glow fell across the couch, illuminating Aaron and Lily. They were wrapped up in each other, her head on his chest, his fingers in her hair. The scene was so intimate, so peaceful, it stole the air from my lungs. My hands went numb. The grocery bags crashed to the floor. A bottle of red wine shattered, spreading like blood across the hardwood. The sound finally broke them apart. Lily jumped up, her face a mask of pure panic. "Sophia. Oh my God, it's not what it looks like." She stammered, already crying. But it was exactly what it looked like. Aaron stood up more slowly. His initial shock hardened into a defensive scowl. "What are you doing home?" he asked, as if I were the intruder. I couldn't speak. I just pointed a trembling finger between them. Lily fled from the room, grabbing her coat and sobbing. Aaron didn't go after her. He stayed, facing me. "How long?" I finally whispered, the words scraping my throat. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "A few months," he muttered. The casualness of it was another blow. He didn't even try to lie well. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "You're always at work. When you're here, you're tired. Our life it's boring, Sophia. Lily gets me. She's fun." Every word was a knife. I had picked up those shifts for us. My tiredness was from caring for others, a fact he once said he admired. Now, it was my greatest flaw. The fight escalated. He threw all his frustrations at me. I was too dedicated to my job. I didn't dress up enough. I wanted a quiet life he found suffocating. I realized he wasn't just making excuses, he truly resented me. Then he said the words that ended everything. "You should just go, Sophia. Get out. This is my house too." He meant the house we both paid for with our sweat and time. I looked at the Christmas tree, at the broken glass and spilled wine on the floor. The home I'd built was just a house. And I was no longer welcome in it. In a daze, I walked upstairs. I pulled a single suitcase from the closet. What do you pack when your life implodes? I grabbed my nurse's scrubs, a few pairs of jeans, some sweaters. I took the photo album from our wedding off the shelf. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the bag. From the small box of special ornaments, I took one, a delicate glass nurse figurine my grandfather had sent me the last Christmas I saw him. It was the only thing that felt truly mine. I walked back downstairs, past Aaron who was now silently staring out the dark window. I didn't say goodbye. I drove without thinking, tears blurring the festive lights on people's houses. I ended up at a motel on the edge of town. It had a faded plastic Santa and a string of blinking lights in the office window. The cheerful Christmas music piping into the lobby felt like a personal insult. The room was cold and smelled of old cigarettes. I sat on the stiff bed, still in my coat, and stared at the wall. The quiet was worse than the shouting. It was the sound of my life stopping. I was a nurse without a patient, a wife without a husband, a friend without a friend. I was nothing. The next day, I used my savings to rent a tiny, furnished apartment. It was a beige box with a view of another building. The silence there was a heavy, living thing. I needed to hear a friendly voice. I called my grandfather. He lived across the country, and I hadn't seen him in 2 years. His voice was weak and thin over the phone, but it was love. "My sweet girl," he said. I couldn't tell him the truth. I just said I missed him and was thinking of him this Christmas. We talked for only a few minutes before he grew tired. Hanging up, I felt more alone than ever. I went back to work. I volunteered for every holiday shift, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's. The hospital was a sad place during the holidays, full of people who didn't want to be there. But for me, it was a refuge. The beeping monitors, the urgent tasks, the needs of my patients, they pulled me out of my own head. I could focus on their pain instead of mine. I worked until I was so physically exhausted that I would fall into my apartment bed and sleep a dreamless sleep. It was the only way to get through the days. In early January, on a cold, gray morning, my phone rang. It was my grandfather's neighbor. Her voice was gentle but firm. He had passed away in the night, peacefully in his sleep. The grief that crashed over me was different from the pain Aaron caused. This was a deep, aching sorrow, but it was clean. It was love with nowhere to go. I booked a flight. The funeral was small, just a few of his old friends and neighbors. He was buried next to my grandmother. I stood by the grave, feeling untethered from everything. After the service, his lawyer, Mr. Ellis, asked me to come to his office the next day. For the reading of the will, he said. I nodded, expecting nothing. My grandfather was a quiet, frugal man who had worked as a machinist his whole life. I assumed he had a small savings account that would cover his final expenses. Mr. Ellis's office was warm and lined with old books. He offered me tea and then read the legal document. My grandfather had left me everything. His house, a beautiful lakeside cottage fully paid off, and a surprisingly large sum of money from a lifetime of wise investments. I was stunned. "There must be a mistake," I said. Mr. Ellis smiled gently. "No mistake, Sophia. He talked about you all the time. He was so proud of the nurse you'd become." Then he pointed to a specific clause. My grandfather's instructions were very clear. The inheritance was to be mine, solely and separately. The language stated it was to be treated as a premarital asset, forever beyond the reach of any spouse. It was a wall of protection built with his love and foresight. "He wanted you to have security, my dear," Mr. Ellis said. "True security that no one could ever take from you." I returned to my beige apartment, but everything felt different. I wasn't a woman clinging to a life raft anymore. I had solid ground under my feet, given to me by my grandfather. I quit signing up for every extra shift. Instead, I used a small portion of the inheritance to do something for myself. I enrolled in an online program to become a nurse practitioner. It was a dream I'd put aside for years, thinking it was too expensive, too time-consuming. Now, I had both the resources and the motivation. My pain began to transform into purpose. Life in a small town means news travels. Through a former coworker, I heard snippets about Aaron. His affair with Lily had burned out quickly once it wasn't a secret. It turned out she wasn't much fun when she wasn't stealing someone else's life. He was living alone in our house. My coworker mentioned, with a hint of gossipy pleasure, that he was struggling. The mortgage payment on a single income was tight, especially with the debt he'd apparently run up. The golden boy was looking a little tarnished. I focused on my studies. The coursework was challenging, but it felt good to use my brain that way again. I bought a comfortable, new sofa for my apartment. I invested in a high-quality coffee maker. These small acts of caring for myself were revolutionary. I started taking walks in the park. I reconnected with a few old friends from nursing school who didn't know Aaron or Lily. Slowly, the tight knot of betrayal in my chest began to loosen. I was healing, not because time passed, but because I was building a new, better life. By the following November, I had completed my nurse practitioner certification. With my new credentials and a glowing recommendation from my hospital, I landed a job at a peaceful family practice clinic. The pace was different, the relationships deeper. I had my own office. I felt a sense of calm professionalism I had never known before. My life was full, not with drama, but with meaningful work and a quiet peace. The frantic, people-pleasing energy I'd once had was gone. I was becoming myself. I had to decide what to do with my grandfather's lake house. The logical thing was to sell it. But when I looked at the pictures, I felt a pull. It was a place of peace, untouched by my old life's memories. I decided to keep it. I made a plan. I would spend Christmas there. Just me. I would honor my grandfather's memory by enjoying the gift he had given me. I arranged for the heat to be turned on and planned to drive up a few days before the holiday. The thought filled me with a quiet, anticipatory joy. A week before my planned trip, my phone lit up. The screen flashed with a name I hadn't seen in almost a year, Aaron. My heart didn't flutter or sink, it just felt still. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. I didn't listen to the message right away. I finished making my dinner, ate it, and cleaned up. Then, with a detached curiosity, I played it. His voice was hesitant, overly warm. "Sophia, hey. It's Aaron. Listen, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About what I did. I need to talk to you. Please call me back. The message was so transparent it was almost funny. The timing was perfect. Gossip about my inheritance had surely reached him. Someone in town must have heard about the lake house or seen my new car. His thinking had conveniently occurred right after he learned I had come into money and property. I didn't call back. 2 days later, another message. This one was more emotional. Sophia, please. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I miss you. I miss what we had. Can we just talk? I need to see you. The performance was impressive, but I knew the script. Against my better judgment, and driven by a desire to see his performance in person, I texted him back. I kept it brief and neutral. I can meet for coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Daily Grind. It was a public place in the next town over. He texted back instantly, a string of grateful messages. Thank you. Yes. I'll be there. Thank you, Sophia. I didn't respond again. The night before the meeting, I felt calm. I wasn't hoping for reconciliation. I was going to a show. I just didn't know if I would be a spectator or take the stage. He was already there when I arrived, nervously stirring a coffee. He looked older. His confident salesman's smile was strained. He stood up as I approached. Sophia. You look amazing, he said. I simply sat down, ordering a tea for myself. He launched into his rehearsed speech. He talked about loneliness, about realizing what he'd lost. He said his life with Lily was a hollow farce. He talked about our early days, how perfect we were. Then he reached across the table and tried to take my hand. I want to come home, Sophia. To our home. We can fix this. We can be a family. I slowly pulled my hand away from his. I looked him directly in the eyes. My voice was quiet but clear. You mean you want to come to my grandfather's lake house? The one that's protected by an ironclad clause stating it's forever mine, and no spouse can ever claim a piece of it? His face went completely blank. The mask slipped, revealing sheer, panicked calculation underneath. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I stood up, placing some cash for my tea on the table. You heard about the money and the house, Aaron. That's why you called. You threw me out into the cold last Christmas. My grandfather's love warmed me back up. You don't get to stand by that fire. I turned and walked out. On Christmas morning, I was exactly where I wanted to be. I was curled up in a blanket by the large window in my grandfather's lake house. A gentle snow was falling outside, blanketing the pines and the frozen lake in perfect white. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The silence was peaceful, not empty. I was warm, I was content, and I was utterly free. My phone had buzzed a few more times with pleas from Aaron, but I had blocked his number. My revenge wasn't shouting or legal battles. It was this quiet morning. It was this security. It was living a beautiful life, protected by my grandfather's wisdom. He had thrown away a dedicated nurse with a modest salary. A year later, he came begging for the woman with grace, security, and an unshakable future. He found the door to that woman's life locked forever, and I held the only key. And that key was shaped not like revenge, but like peace.